told him I want to sleep with other guys to spice things up. Now I'm getting divorced.
My husband ghosted me and filed for divorce just BC. I asked to open the relationship, WTF. Hello, Reddit. Posting here because my friends recommended it and said it would help me feel better. Please note I'm not coming on here to be judged. I know what I did was fucked up and I've been dealing with the fallout ever since. I'm just looking for a safe space to share my stories. My name is Isabella and I am a 28-year-old woman. I've been married to my husband Owen, a 29-year-old man, for about 4 years now, and we dated for 2 years. Owen and I first met at this cozy bookstore in the city, totally by chance. I was deep into a poetry book, lost in the words, and Owen, caught up in some classic novel, accidentally bumped into me. We shared a laugh about the book collision, and that's how it all started. Our conversation wasn't anything fancy, just talking about the books we were into, but somehow it became this real connection. Owen's friendly vibes and his interest in my poetry made the bookstore feel like a safe place where we could be ourselves. As we ventured out beyond the bookstore, the city became our playground. We'd hit up local cafes, check out art exhibits, and just wander around parks, hand in hand. Every step felt like we were exploring not just the city, but also each other's worlds. With Owen, it was more than just a relationship. It was like finding a partner who got me. That little bookstore turned into our spot, where our story began. A reminder that sometimes cool connections can start in the most unexpected places. Our first date was like the start of a cool love story. We decided to keep it chill, just grabbing dinner at this cute Italian place on a quiet street. I was so nervous. Owen was already there, greeting me with a friendly smile. The fact that he picked an Italian spot showed he was paying attention to our chats about food preferences. Once we snagged a cozy spot inside, the vibe was just right. Soft lights, a background hum of people talking, and that Italian herb smell floating around. The conversation rolled naturally from small talk to deeper stuff. Owen shared childhood stories, and I found myself opening up about my hopes and dreams. Owen made me laugh a lot. He made it all feel easy and natural. When the food hit the table, it was like a team effort to navigate the menu. We shared bites, cracked jokes about our food quirks, and it felt like we were on the same wavelength. As the night went on, Owen reached over and our hands met in the middle of the table. Simple, but it spoke volumes. In the restaurant, we silently agreed that this wasn't just any date. It was the start of something good. Post-dinner, we went for a spontaneous walk through the city. The night air was crisp, and the city lights set the scene for our after-dinner adventure. Walking hand in hand, we shared stories and exchanged glances that said way more than words. Our first date wrapped up with a solid hug and plans for more hangs. Years later, and we still have an amazing relationship with each other, still make time for dates every week, and really just enjoy each other. He became my best friend pretty instantly from when we started hanging out in high school, and that still hasn't changed today. I have a girlfriend who I do call my best friend, and outside of my marriage she is, but even that doesn't compare to the friendship I have with my husband. We've had our rough patches, but never anything very severe. There are some things I need to change about myself and things he needs to work on as well. Nothing relationship ending, just things that we need to do to be better people and better partners. And I doubt this will ever change, as it's impossible to just be perfect people. We don't have any children yet, but plan to try for some soon. We both work, and though I bring home pretty decent money, Owen actually makes a lot more than I do. He also owns our house, although we've both had small patches of unemployment in the past and were supported by the other. There's never been any hostility over the finances, regardless of who is making more or who is supporting whom. Our marriage has survived depression, alcoholism, and a couple of physical medical conditions, all met with overwhelming support from each other. We are a great team. Our sex life is great and really active. A dry spell for us is going the work week without having sex because one or both of us are just too exhausted. But that is not very common. We get along well with each other's families, and my family has really bonded with my husband. As far as they are concerned, he's just another son and brother. He's everything I could have ever hoped for in a husband and more, and I really truly love him. Now, I've felt myself attracted to others in the past, and I'm sure he has been through the same, but it's not anything we've ever discussed with each other. I know that it's normal, and it's never been anything too intense before. If I find myself starting to get feelings for someone who I see a lot, it doesn't take much to shake off. This is the first time I ever dealt with feelings so intense, and I didn't really know what to do next. My coworker was very attractive, super friendly, and I just enjoyed being around him. We started working at this company around the same time, roughly 8 months ago. We were in training together for a couple of weeks, which was absolute torture. My feelings came on strong and came on quick. I'm sure I turned red when he flashed me a smile a lot of times. It would be embarrassing enough if I were single simply because we worked together, but I'm *married*, and I feel like that probably looks really poorly on me. We don't work together anymore, but our departments are close, and if he walked through my section, he'd put his hand on my shoulder and give it a squeeze to get my attention when he was walking by, then flash me that smile. I would make conversation if we pass each other or are at a work event together, but I did the same with pretty much everyone I worked with/currently work with. We don't have each other on social media, haven't exchanged numbers, and don't see each other outside of work. I was invited out to a bar nearby by him and a few others a couple of times, but turned them down. I work in a male-dominated field and didn't feel right being the only woman out at the bar with a bunch of guys, especially one who I do feel this way about. I avoided his floor at work when possible, and if he's on lunch at the same time, I'll say hi as I pass, but just grab my stuff and eat on the patio or on another floor. I try to just avoid thinking about him or remind myself of how dumb I'm being, but I can't shake this feeling. And I'm afraid I'm going to be an idiot and let passion take over or any of that nonsense cheating people usually use as excuses. I think all of those excuses for one-time mistakes are garbage. I'm trying to be in control of my actions and could never be so cruel to my husband. I just don't know what to do to shake these feelings. The last time I felt such a strong desire for someone was when I met my husband. We were great friends instantly and hung out, fooled around for about a year before we made things serious. I was very young when we got together, and none of my relationships prior were very serious. I just never felt so strongly attracted to someone and didn't think it was even possible to with anyone else. I don't compare my husband to my coworker or vice versa, and that's not what I'm trying to do here either. I've just been able to shake it off any time I've had feelings come on for someone else. It doesn't matter what I do with this guy, though. If I think about him, it's hard to get him off my mind regardless of what's going on around me. I have gone weeks without running into him, and he won't cross my mind. But then, I can catch a glimpse of him when I'm strolling into work, and my heart will start racing faster. I have a desire to be around him and be close to him, and I just need it to go away. I feel like I'm in high school all over again. Except instead of daydreaming in class, I'm trying to get this dude off my mind and get some damn work done. I know that Reddit is big on full disclosure, but this wasn't something I felt like discussing with my husband. These feelings weren't coming out of neglect or want in my relationship with him. I didn't feel like I was missing out on anything by being with him, and there was nothing that he could do that would fix that for me. If he were feeling the same way about someone, I can honestly say I wouldn't want to hear about it. If he felt neglected and like my actions were causing him to desire affection elsewhere, then that would be a different story. I know that this is something that would affect him really bad, and I didn't want him to feel uncomfortable for the 50 hours a week that I would be in the same building with this guy when there's nothing he could do or say that would change what's going on with me. And there's no chance of me crossing a line. I just didn't see the purpose in creating an issue in my marriage when there wasn't one. We're probably closer to 25%, 30% female employees, the rest being male. We all give each other a hard time and play around, and it's not just all the guys here petting on the women. I've only had female coworkers mess with my hair as they're running by, similar to what I do with my sisters. The extent of touch that I've gotten given to any of the guys here has been a pat on the back for a good job in a rough close, handshakes, pat on the shoulder in passing to get their attention while going to make copies. This isn't a stuffy office setting, but this isn't HR's nightmare either. That being said, I decided that I needed to find a way to put distance between coworker and myself, given the reaction he got out of me, even with something as simple as eye contact. However, when I resumed work after the weekend, I found out that he had put in for a transfer into my department and had also been added onto my team. No problem, I'm an adult. I can behave like an adult. And the time away to clear my head and reevaluate where I was putting my energy had had a bigger affect than I anticipated. Well, things got a little weird. He started grabbing me coffee when he'd pick his up because I took on a new project and was showing up earlier, staying later than normal, but didn't do this for anyone else whose workload had increased. About 4 of us took on new clients. Our lunches lined up a little more frequently. I got friend follow requests on social media, declined, stuff like that. I felt like he would stand a little closer to me than what was comfortable, but at this point still felt like I was reading too much into it. It was confusing and difficult given that this feeling isn't wanted, but I do just feel drawn to him, like there's a connection I desperately want to break. I always park by the smoking section because I have a bit of a habit and like to be close, and he caught me tonight while I was walking out to my car. He stopped me and asked to bum a smoke, and we talked for a couple of minutes. He then said he had something kind of uncomfortable to talk to me about. He told me he had felt really attracted to me since we first met, and that working more closely with me has shown him that he has some real feelings for me. He says he knows that I'm married and will respect any boundaries I set up, but that he hasn't felt this strongly about someone before, and he couldn't live with the what-ifs. Apparently, he went so far as to end things with his girlfriend, and is now staying with his parents for a couple of weeks while he gets a new place lined up. He said he could feel something between us and didn't think it was only him. I told him that I am very happily married and that he shouldn't mistake my friendliness with flirtation, and that he needs to learn more appropriate boundaries with coworkers. I asked him to give me distance, and that if it wasn't work-related, there was no reason to discuss it because we are coworkers, not friends, and left. He looked a little defeated and apologized for overstepping. So, there I was, caught up in this mess of feelings for a coworker who seemed like he stepped out of a movie or something. Honestly, he was like a magnet drawing me in, making me feel all sorts of things. But here's the kicker. I'm married and I made promises. Dealing with this crush was like walking on a tightrope, trying not to fall into a pit of bad decisions. I knew I couldn't mess with my marriage, but dang, the attraction was strong. After some back and forth, I decided to spill the beans to the coworker. I repeated him, "Look, I'm into you, but I can't mess up my marriage." It was tough, but I had to do it. The air got heavy with the weight of the conversation, and I could see the spark we had dim a bit. Trying not to completely crush the guy, I asked for some time to sort my head out. He was cool about it, gave me the space I needed. Heading home, my thoughts were all over the place. I knew I would hurt my husband, and that stung. But deep down, I knew I couldn't let this attraction mess up what I had with him. My husband was out of town on a work trip, so I had to come home to an empty house feeling the weirdest mix of emotions I've had since this whole mess started. I even had trouble falling asleep by myself, and the whole situation was a mess. So, after a night of barely catching any sleep, I had this light bulb moment. Instead of sneaking around and breaking promises, what if I could get my husband to agree to open things up a bit? We're not exactly the thrill-seeker type, but I figured a little nudge might do the trick. The plan was simple. Talk to my husband about the idea of us having an open relationship. It felt like a fair deal to me. I get to explore things with my coworker without stepping into cheating territory. So, I decided that the next day when my husband was back from his business trip, I decided to have that heart-to-heart and see if he'd be game for this not-so-traditional solution. I also knew that I couldn't tell my husband about this crush on my coworker because he would never agree to open the relationship. I decided that if he asked why I suddenly wanted to open the relationship, I would tell him it was because I had gotten a little bored and wanted a little bit of an adventure. So, the next day rolls in, and my husband shoots me a text saying he's back from his business trip. I'm at work, and I reply that I'll head straight home after my shift because I needed to chat about something. Knowing he's prone to a bit of panic, I reassure him it's nothing urgent or bad. He breathes a sigh of relief and says, "Okay." Work finally wraps up and I rush home. To my surprise, my husband had whipped up dinner and he nailed it. Italian, my favorite. We sit down, and he's giving me these curious looks, probably wondering what's up. After we're done eating, I decide it's time to spill the beans. I'm careful with my words, making sure to be both cautious and a bit firm. I start by telling him how much I love him and that our marriage is one of the best things in my life. He nods along, all ears. Then, I throw in that I've been feeling a bit bored lately, thinking we could use a little adventure. He looks puzzled since, as I've mentioned before, our sex life is solid. He asks what I have in mind, and that's my cue. I take a deep breath and pop the question. How would he feel about us opening up our marriage? My husband's face didn't betray a single emotion. He calmly requested me to repeat what I had just said, although I could tell he caught every word. This wasn't new. Even when we were dating, he had this knack for maintaining a perfect poker face. I figured he just wanted me to say it again to confirm that it wasn't some kind of misunderstanding. So I took a breath and repeated the question, asking him how he would feel about opening up our marriage. To say my husband was appalled would be an understatement. Angry doesn't even cover it. He shot up from the couch, questioning if I'd lost my mind, demanding to know what I meant by all this. I was taken aback by the intensity of his reaction. Trying to explain, I told him that I thought opening up our marriage could inject some excitement. But he wasn't buying it. He accused me of lying, claiming that this was just a shady way for me to find an excuse to cheat. My husband unleashed a verbal storm, hitting me with words that cut deep. He has this way of using words that stings, and within seconds, tears were streaming down my face. I kept pleading with him to stop, assuring him that cheating was the last thing on my mind. What else was I supposed to say? But he wasn't buying it. He claimed I was just covering up, and that made the tears flow even harder. He dropped a bombshell, saying this whole thing made him reevaluate our marriage. That hit me like a ton of bricks, and I begged him even more. I tried to take it all back, telling him to forget I ever brought it up, but he wouldn't let it go. According to him, me suggesting an open marriage meant I'd been thinking about cheating for a while. It was like a punch to the gut. Then he dropped the bomb. He needed some space. I resisted, but he stood firm, threatening to kick me out. More tears. He suggested I go stay with my sister or parents, giving him the breathing room to figure out what all of this meant for our future. Trust, he said, was gone, and he no longer believed in me. The weight of those words really hit me hard. Facing the reality that I had to leave, I knew my husband's calm demeanor often morphed into an impenetrable wall of anger. When he reached that point, there was no reasoning with him. All you could do was wait for the storm to pass so you could have a rational conversation. So I packed up the essentials and headed to my sister's place. She was shocked to see me, having only sent her a text about coming over. Luckily, we shared a close bond, and she welcomed me in with open arms. Pouring my heart out, I spilled all the details of the clash with my husband. She couldn't believe it. Asking the hard questions, my sister wanted to know if I was planning to cheat. Unable to lie, I spilled the beans about the coworker who had caught my eye. Disappointment radiated from her, and she wasted no time calling up my parents to share the news. They too expressed their disappointment but promised to help me talk to my husband. No matter how much I or my family tried, my husband seemed to disappear into thin air, ghosting me for a relentless 3 months. Not a single word from him, no response to texts, no acknowledgement when we showed up at his place. It was like he vanished into thin air, leaving us with unanswered questions and a sense of helplessness. My worry grew, coupled with anger. I called in sick to work numerous times, unable to focus when I did show up, seething with resentment towards my coworker. The attraction I once felt toward him withered away, and I realized he was at the root of this whole mess. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, my husband broke his silence. I hoped it meant his anger had subsided and forgiveness was finally going to happen. But no, he dropped a bomb. In a text, he apologized for ghosting me and dropped the bombshell that he wanted a divorce. No discussion, no closure, just a cold announcement. Devastated, I spent the entire day in tears, calling in sick to work yet again. My sister stayed by my side, trying to console me, but the pain was unbearable. How could I move on without the man I loved so deeply? The future seemed bleak without my husband, and I felt utterly lost. After bawling my eyes out for a bit, I had to face the fact that my husband wasn't coming back. I messed up big time, and it was all on me. He was avoiding me like the plague, but he did reach out to my folks, gave them the whole explanation, making it crystal clear that trying to patch things up was a lost cause. He said even couples therapy wouldn't fix the mess. Then he shot me a text, saying to sign the divorce papers for a smooth breakup that won't drag on forever and cost a ton. And just like that, he disappears from my life. No more constant touch, no replies to my texts. It hurts so hard that this is the end for us and that it's all my fault. Despite the mess, I'm back to the grind at work, though I've cut down on the sick days I used to take. As for that coworker, yeah, he's still physically attractive, but now I'm more repulsed and disgusted by him. The guy triggered this whole disaster by approaching me in the parking lot, and I'll never forgive him for that. He seems to have caught on because now he's bending over backward to please me. But I'm not giving him the time of day. It's a challenge since we're in the same department, but I'm making it clear. No acknowledgement, no nothing. I've had enough of his part in this mess. I didn't go into work today, but I did get an email from coworker. It starts with what seems like a sincere apology to then offering to buy me dinner this weekend to make it up to me. I responded with, "Your advances ruined my marriage, and I will say again that I am not interested in setting you outside of work." His second email was another apology while making sure I knew the offer for dinner as friends to make it up to me would still be on the table. I did not respond to the second one, and he has not reached out again today. I am in a bit of a weird place, growing a bigger dislike towards coworker while still having those weird primal feelings. Planning a nice dinner in and some Netflix and chill when my sister gets home. Definitely putting in for a department change when one becomes available. I've spent a little time browsing job postings, but I do love where I work, so I don't think that's the best solution. I always used to underestimate karma. People would say karma is real and slaps back, and I always just thought it was all a big joke. I believed that not all actions had consequences, and that sometimes, even if you did the worst thing in the universe, you would not get any bad payback. Until it happened to me. I'm currently homeless and living in a motel. I did the most horrible thing ever. I betrayed my husband trust, or should I say ex-husband, since we're getting a divorce. I not only cheated on him, but I also vanished with my affair partner. Now I am back and my husband no longer wants me back. He has kicked me to the curb. I know you're wondering how I got here, so let me give you my backstory. My name is Sasha, and I am a 29-year-old woman. I am married to Connor, a 29-year-old man. We like in the United States and have 2 kids. Ryan, our eldest, a 9-year-old boy, and our youngest, Felix, a 6-year-old boy. Connor and I have been married for 5 years. Connor and I met and fell in love in the crowded chaos of our high school, where lockers banged and kids chatted like there was no tomorrow. My world bumped into Connor's. Literally LOL. He was the genius everyone knew, acing every class without breaking a sweat. Me? I was just a regular girl with a knack for getting through the day without being bullied. So as time rolled on, me and Connor went from high school to college. When I hit 20, we had our first kid, Ryan, a little ball of happiness. The sleepless nights and diaper changes were tough, but his first steps and laughter made it all worth it. Fast forward 3 years, at 23, we added another member to our team, Felix. Our little family was growing, and our place was filled with the noise of 2 energetic kids. Juggling college and parenting wasn't easy, but we made it work with late-night study sessions and a whole lot of teamwork. Graduating from college wasn't just about getting a piece of paper. It was a big deal for us. It meant we stuck together through the ups and downs, from high school hallways to sleepless baby nights. Looking back, our story was like a quilt stitched with love, growth, and the chaos of raising a family. The challenges of college and the joys of watching our kids grow strengthened our bond. So, when we hit 24, Connor and I decided to tie the knot. Getting married felt like the natural next step in our journey from high school to becoming parents and college. The whole wedding planning thing was a mix of nerves and excitement. We picked a venue, wrote vows, and figured out who to invite, all while trying to keep things true to who we are. Our big day wasn't just about traditions, it was about making it personal, reflecting us as a couple. Surrounded by friends and family, we said our vows. Promising to stick together through thick and thin had a realness to it that went beyond the words we spoke. The ceremony unfolded like a mix of laughter, tears, and memories that led us to that point. Going from a couple to a married duo brought a whole new level of commitment. The rings, the promises, it all felt like a solid foundation for what came next. Our families, our stories, and now our shared path as husband and wife. After the big day, stepping into married life felt like a continuation with a fresh start. Sharing a last name, figuring out this husband and wife thing, it was all new, but it was us, together. Married life had its bumps, not always a walk in the park. Connor, as you know, is super smart. He aced college, became a surgeon, and raked in a good amount of money. He even had a side hustle that practically ran itself. So financially, we were solid. He covered all the bills and owned the house, a gift from his mom, but only his name was on the deed. The whole house only in Connor's name thing bothered me, but it was a gift, so I had to bite my tongue. Dealing with Connor's mom has been a bit of a roller coaster from the get-go. Even back in high school when we were just dating, she never really warmed up to me. Things took an interesting turn when we decided to tie the knot. She insisted that my name shouldn't be anywhere near the house deed. To make matters more interesting, she had me sign a prenup before marrying Connor. Weird, right? But I didn't let it bother me too much. I loved Connor for who he is, not for his money. So I went ahead and signed the darn thing. Now, when it came to the house, she vehemently stated that if my name went on the deed, the fancy house offer was off the table. So we ended up with only Connor's name on it. It wasn't an easy pill to swallow dealing with all this family drama. But come on, a 7-bedroom house with a home theater and a pool? Who'd say no to that? I bit the bullet and accepted the deal, even though it felt like a bit of a trade-off. Connor's parents, they're well off and like to shoot for the stars. Since high school, they've been pushing him hard to be a high achiever, and they were the ones who nudged him into becoming a surgeon. And I'm guessing they never really liked me because I was never an overachiever. Connor thought it'd be great for me to be a stay-at-home mom. Nice idea, but I wanted a bit more. I snagged a job related to my degree. Nothing too crazy, just something to keep me from going stir-crazy at home. Our differences led to some tense moments, but we figured it out. The house hiccup made me grumble a bit, and I let Connor know. He got it, apologized for pushing the stay-at-home thing, and we moved on. Connor, being a surgeon, was pretty much always tied up with work. But hats off to the guy, he really put in the effort to be there for our kids. And you know what? It worked. Despite his crazy schedule, the kids didn't feel his absence much because he genuinely tried so darn hard. On my side, like I said before I snagged a job, nothing too fancy or stressful, just something to break the monotony of home life. The workplace wasn't a giant corporation, but it wasn't a tiny shack either. It was a good fit. My coworkers were cool, and in no time I became part of the gang. After work, we'd hit a nearby bar for drinks or sometimes grab dinner together. Making these plans needed a bit of coordination, especially with the kids at home. I always made sure there was a babysitter or a relative ready to step in. And if I was running late, I'd shoot them a message, keeping everyone in the loop. Things were going well at home until this guy from work, Scott, started acting a bit off. We both started our jobs together but ended up in different departments. Then, out of the blue, Scott wanted to switch to my department. I didn't get it. His department was good, so why make the move? I wasn't close to him, and asking would feel a bit nosy, so I just let it slide. Surprisingly, HR approved his request, and there he was, now part of my department. This whole thing left me scratching my head. Why the sudden interest? What was his deal? However, I let it go as I felt it didn't concern me. Of course, I was wrong, LOL. Before I go on now, let me tell you, I adore my husband. No doubt about that. But appreciating beauty is something else, right? Scott the guy was a looker, blonde hair, blue eyes, the whole handsome package. He fit the classic stereotype of good looking. Plus, to top it off, he had this posh British accent that we'd sometimes playfully tease him about. I thought Scott and I were just messing around with some light teasing, you know? But then, things got a bit weird. Scott started being way too nice, like extra nice. He'd always grab something for me during his lunch break, and I usually work through mine, making sure it was exactly what I liked. If he went for a drink, bam, he'd bring me a coffee, perfectly how I take it. But that's not all. Scott took it up a notch, doing these little helpful things that kinda caught me off guard. He'd tidy up my desk or make sure my computer was shut down if I forgot and left early. These small gestures were nice, sure, but they got me thinking. Was this just being super friendly? Or was there something more behind it? The line between good intentions and, well, maybe too much attention started to blur, leaving me a bit puzzled about what was really going on with Scott, and to be honest, I liked it. So Scott wasn't just nice, he was like super attentive. Every morning he'd hit me up with compliments. You look beautiful. That earring really pops. That dress suits you so well. That kind of stuff. His compliments became a daily thing, and I gotta admit, they got to me. I started putting in a bit more effort into how I looked, secretly hoping for those sweet remarks from Scott. The attention? Yeah, I was all about it. Other girls at work were trying to get Scott's attention with some flirty moves, but he shut them down like a pro. Yet here I was, not even making an effort to flirt or anything, and he was handing out attention like it was free candy. It was a bit surprising, but honestly, I kinda enjoyed being in the spotlight without even trying. Scott's attention made me feel special, and no matter how much I tried to play it cool, I couldn't deny that I was digging it, maybe a bit more than I should have. The dynamic with Scott continued, and truth be told, I didn't take any steps to make him stop. Sure, I could have reported him to HR or something, but I didn't. Why? Well, I was basking in the attention and I genuinely enjoyed it. However, my willingness to let things slide came back to haunt me one day. It was a coworker's birthday, and we opted for a low-key celebration at a bar. I gave my husband a heads up, letting him know I'd be running late due to the celebration, and he was cool with it. And Scott joined us for the outing. As the night unfolded, the drinks flowed, and I must have had a bit too much. In my intoxicated state, I crossed a line with Scott, something I didn't even realize until the next morning. I had gotten so drunk I snuck off the bathroom of the bar with Scott to have sex. So basically, I cheated on my husband with Scott. I was so out of it that I couldn't even drive, and Scott ended up dropping me off at home after our indiscretion in the bar's restroom. He concocted a story, claiming our co-workers elected him to take me home because I was too drunk. My husband bought the story, thanked Scott for being a good guy, and I woke up the next morning with the horrifying realization of what had transpired. Guilt and regret flooded over me as I came to grips with the fact that I had betrayed my husband. I was freaked out, honestly. I couldn't help but wonder if my husband somehow got wind of what went down. And if he did, would he ever be able to forgive me for that colossal screw-up? The guilt and fear were eating at me so bad, I needed a day off from work to deal with the mess involving Scott. I couldn't even face him. How could he? But truth be told, I couldn't entirely blame the guy. We were both wasted. And if I'm being honest, there was a part of me that kinda enjoyed it, which just added a layer of guilt to the whole situation. The next day at work, Scott had the nerve to approach me, and stupidly, I fell for his smooth talk again. He spun this story about how what went down wasn't wrong and it wasn't my fault. Blaming it on both of us being drunk, he then dropped the bomb that he'd love to keep it going. Classic move. He also threw in the line about my husband not measuring up in the bedroom, and against my better judgment, I bought into it. Our bedroom struggles with my husband were real. His crazy schedule, balancing work and dealing with the kids, meant he had little time for me, leaving me unsatisfied. I asked Scott for some time to think, and he reluctantly agreed. But by the end of the day, I made a dumb move. I gave in to Scott's persistence and agreed to have a secret affair. Looking back, I know what I did was really dumb and heartless. If I could go back, I'd undo it, but that's just not how life works. So let me continue. Scott and I got into this secret affair. It felt wild and liberating. I stopped bothering my husband for intimacy because, well, Scott took care of that, and it made me feel happier. This secret thing went on for a few weeks until Scott hit me with a bomb. Out of nowhere, Scott says he's not cool with sharing me and drops the bomb that he wants me to leave my husband. It caught me off guard. He's asking for a divorce. I hesitated, pointing out that was crazy, but Scott wasn't having it. Instead, he floats this idea of us taking a few months off to go to Spain, something he claims he's always wanted to do. I'm shocked. Being the practical one, I ask how we could even afford such a trip. Scott's genius plan? Dip into my husband's money. My husband was rich after all, was he not? However, I immediately explained to Scott why it would be impossible to take the money from my husband. My husband was rich, yes, but we had separate funds. He took care of all the bills, and so we never really had a need for a joint account. So we keep our funds separate. Of course, he buys me stuff, and when I need money, he always gives me, but asking him for a huge amount so I can leave and travel to Spain is just not going to happen. Now, this is where it got even more nuts. Scott suggests we combine our savings for this grand adventure. Logically, it made zero sense, but Scott's had this knack for making the dumbest ideas sound like pure genius. Against my better judgment, I got hooked on this wild dream of a thrilling life with Scott and the promise of Spain. So, like I've said before, it was literally a very dumb idea. Somehow, had this knack for making the most idiotic things sound like the deal of a lifetime, and I fell for it. I decided to cash in on some diamonds my husband had bought me. These gems were no joke, pretty pricey stuff. Selling them brought in a good chunk of money, but we were hungry for more because, Spain isn't exactly cheap. We handed in our 1-month notice at work, snagged our final paychecks, and then with the cash from the jewelry and our savings, we had a pretty decent pile. The plan? Leave in about a week. I packed a bag, kept things on a low, and threw in only the basics, like clothes. Scott held on to all the money we had. During that week, reality hit me. I felt a surge of emotions because, I was about to leave my kids and my husband. My husband even picked up on my weird behavior and asked me about it. I couldn't spill the beans, so I had to put on this act like everything was peachy. I didn't even let him in on the fact that I quit my job, knowing he'd want an explanation. Luckily, he was super busy, making it easy to keep our grand escape under wraps. So fast forward a week, and there I was, jetting off to Spain with Scott, literally leaving my family behind for some escapade with my affair partner. Yeah, I know, heartless move. Please don't judge. I was just being downright stupid back then. If I could rewind time, like I've said before, I would. But, life doesn't come with a rewind button. Anyway, let's get back to what happened. Scott and I landed in Spain, and within 2 of me leaving, my husband was blowing up my phone. Texts like, "You've been gone almost a day. No calls, no texts. What's going on?" I realized I couldn't keep ignoring him. He was already threatening to go to the police, and I didn't want that drama. So I sent him a text, telling him to never contact me again, that I had taken off to Spain with my boyfriend, and I had no plans of returning. Then I blocked him. The first few months in Spain were a blast. We explored, had fun, tried all the local dishes, you name it. It was an adventure, and honestly, those initial moments were pretty amazing. Here's the deal. If you keep splurging money without replenishing it, you're bound to hit empty pockets eventually. And that's exactly what went down with Scott and me. After a few months of living the high life in Spain, the reality check hit hard. Our funds were running dry, and we had to face the music and head back home. I guess I never really pondered the consequences of my actions until the point when returning home became a stark reality. Our extravagant lifestyle left us with barely enough to last more than a day in Spain and still afford a flight back home. So, we made the call to get our plane tickets and hightail it out of there as soon as possible. So, after being away for months, reality hit hard when we got back. And guess what? Scott decides to end things right there at the airport. Classic move, right? "We had our fun, but I'm getting a bit bored. Gotta move on," he says in that annoying British accent of his. Dumped at the airport, and suddenly I've got no place to go back to. Obviously, my husband won't be rolling out the welcome mat, especially after flooding social media with pics of me and Scott living it up in Spain. While we were off on our adventure, both sets of parents and friends tried reaching out calls blowing up my phone. But I stubbornly dodged every call. Now, freshly dumped at the airport, I realize none of them are likely to take me in, not even my own parents. With nowhere else to turn, I start dialing up my friends, hoping against hope that someone will lend a helping hand. But of course they shut me down, some even scolding me and telling me to be ashamed for abandoning my family to globetrot with my affair partner. The weight of my poor choices starts sinking in, and tears start flowing because, let's face it, I messed up big time. In a desperate bid to salvage something, I dial up my husband, but he doesn't even answer. Fueled by regret, I scrape together the last bit of cash in my account and find refuge in the cheapest motel I can find, telling them I'll probably stay for about a week. Panic sets in. I'm desperately trying to reach my husband, missing my kids, and fully aware that I've messed up royally. I'm firing off multiple text messages, no response. It's as if my little fantasy world has crumbled, and the harsh reality is smacking me in the face, exposing the sheer stupidity of my actions. That night was a mess of tears. Trying to get back to some sort of normal, I called up my former coworkers to see if they'd heard the gossip and if there was a chance I could go back to work. Well, the news of me cheating and running off with Scott had spread like wildfire at the office, and it seemed like my chances of getting hired again were pretty much zilch. I was officially in a tight spot. Then, out of the blue, my husband gives me a ring. But surprise, surprise, it's not to patch things up. Nope. He drops the bomb that he's calling to talk divorce proceedings. Cue the tears as I beg him not to go through with it. But he's having none of it, pointing out how I can't expect forgiveness after ditching our family for a global joyride with my boyfriend. He insists on meeting at a restaurant, promising to text me the address before hanging up. So, there I am at the restaurant, ready to face the music. I try to hug my husband, but he's having none of it, tells me not to touch him. Disappointing, but not unexpected. No kids in tow, and I get it. After what I pulled, they probably don't want to see me. Cutting to the chase, my husband hands me divorce papers. No beating around the bush. He lays it out. Signing these papers is supposedly in my best interest. And here comes the kicker. He's gunning for full custody of the kids, leaving me with supervised visits only. I'm shocked. Why supervised? Why can't I just have normal visits? Does it mean I can't even take the kids out anywhere? He explains that, yep, I need his permission for any outings. After my previous stunt running off with my boyfriend, he's dead set on avoiding a repeat and me running off with the kids this time. He says he's ready to take it to court to keep my visits supervised. Tears and whimpers escape me, but my husband shuts them down without a second thought. He unloads on me like never before, expressing the hurt and heartbreak I've caused. According to him, forgiveness isn't even on the table. He lays it out plain and simple. I should be ashamed, and showing my face here was a mistake. The harsh truth hit me so hard he pointed out that I abandoned him and the kids, gallivanting around the world with my boyfriend. He told me that if I thought I could just waltz back into their lives, then I'd better think again. He emphasized that they've moved on, and the idea of reconciliation is nothing more than wishful thinking. I was still crying, saying sorry, but my husband wasn't budging. The house was in his name, no two ways about it. We had a prenup, and since he got the house even before we officially got hitched, well, I couldn't even try to claim it. The prenup, made to protect his stuff, was another thing. Plus, I knew ditching my husband and the kids to jet off with my boyfriend wouldn't exactly win me sympathy points in any courtroom. He told me to sign the divorce papers, making it clear that fighting it was a lost cause. After settling the bill, he hightailed it out of the restaurant, leaving me to face the fallout of my actions all by myself. I had not just lost my family, but potentially any financial leg to stand on. The meeting with my husband happened yesterday, and it has left me holed up in this hotel room, still a wreck of emotions. Reality's hitting me hard. I'm in a tight spot, and the options aren't exactly a walk in the park. It's either reluctantly scribble my name on those divorce papers now, or gear up for a legal brawl that, let's be real, seems like a lost cause. Deep down, I'm well aware that even the slickest lawyer can't magic away the mess I've created. As the weight of it all sinks in, the need to lock down a job is glaringly obvious. The idea of facing life's uncertainties, maybe even hitting the streets, is a daunting prospect. And so I find myself pouring out my story, not just to vent, but hoping someone out there might pick up a lesson from my wild misadventure. Cheating, that seemingly thrilling detour, has turned into a disastrous route for me. So here I am, a living proof of the golden rule. Don't cheat. It's just not worth it. I'm urging others to take this message to heart and steer clear of choices that could wreck relationships and spare them the agony I'm currently wrestling with.